Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our final Practice of Innovation class. We are at, I think, what is week 13 and lesson 21, but it is the final week for us and our time together. There are one or two things that we still need to do this semester. Task 4 is due this week, so I'm expecting those submissions to come through. Then we will do the marking and, of course, the final POE later on in a couple of days' time. So I hope you're working hard on that and that you're enjoying the learning experience and actually spending time going through the learned content. It's quite important that you understand that that is put together for your benefit and has all the theory that you need to understand to meet the module outcomes. I've enjoyed looking through your tasks, your assessments so far, marking them and seeing where your headspace is at. And I can definitely see that some of you have a real strong ability to write good reports and are practicing the guidelines that we've been giving you around scientific and academic research that will be practical and acceptable in the world of work. So talking about the world of work and industry, I have a guest speaker who's going to be telling us about industry and about her work as a senior leader in various organizations. Good friend of mine, her name is Yugesh Frylinck. Yugesh will introduce herself more eloquently, but she has been a very senior leader in brands such as Ster Kinekor, where she was actually responsible for the frontline guest experience. So when you go to the movies, how you experience that. She was responsible for all of that stuff, and she's going to talk to you about some innovations or the impact of innovation in that role. She was also a very senior leader in the Edcon group, who you will know as the previous owners of the Edgar's brand and various other brands. And she also worked for Top TV, setting up their call centers and their contact centers to make sure that customers could get support, could get help when they needed it to be. So a wealth of experience, very well known in the South African landscape around anything to do with customers and their experience. She is also one of South Africa's very first CCXPs. So what this means, there's an international body that sets the standards for professionals in our industry, in the CX industry. And they have an exam, which Yugesh was one of the first South Africans to pass. So she is very well respected, very experienced, and a massive pleasure for us to have speak to us today. So Yugesh, we can't wait to hear what you have to share with us.
Thanks, Eldon. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my experiences, and hopefully it helps the team that's listening in. Yeah, thanks for the warm welcome and the great introduction. So for today, I'd like to discuss innovation in the real world. And I know in your space right now, you have been basically involved with your books and the theory and all the, the do's and the don'ts. And my experiences and what I'm hoping to share with you today is the practical application of those kind of things. So let's just kick off with sharing a little bit about me. I'm not going to do too much because Eldon has done a little bit already. So I'm just moving slides. So innovation in the real world has taught me a lot about how to apply the theory and the applications, the application of the models that you learn about and all the the benefits and how to sell that internally within your organization. So that's just me, Yugesh Frylinck. I've been working in the customer experience space for the last 20 years, and a lot of innovation has happened within that space. However, innovation that you might have also what you plan to do is not often what you end up doing, but I'll explain through the experiences that I've had. And I think if you looked at the first slide, it talks about the ability to accept failure, but also pick up from where you lost at, you fell down and try again, because that just makes you better. And I suppose over the last 20 years, I've managed to do that as well. So just some clients and partners that I have worked with, so that you know that I come from a credible resource and that I've got the experience behind me. I've worked with SAP Arena, not as, this is as in my consulting space, as well as aside from my corporate experience. So I've worked with SAP, with PNet. Some of you guys will become familiar with PNet and LinkedIn at some point when you're starting to look for your jobs. Arena Holdings, they're the guys that publish the news. So it's the Sunday Times, the Daily Times, the financial magazines. And I've worked with Ford Automotive Company. And I suppose another interesting brand that you would probably know is Van Skyke, the bookstore. And I've also worked with a lot of global partners, and they still do work with me today. So that's enough about me and my company. But I tend to always latch onto local people that are doing well and have a good credibility and a good image and a brand in South Africa, as well as keeping in touch with global brands as well. And that's how I keep myself abreast of everything that's going on. So just to talk to you a little bit, I've picked 3 brands that I'd like to speak about, where we have tried and tested innovation and what has worked and what hasn't worked. So some of them are good stories and some of them are bad stories. But the important lesson here is that it's the journey to getting your business to a point where they are comfortable to innovate, as well as the ability to have the openness and the acknowledgement that it's not working, even though you've put in time and effort, but also to pick up and try again. So my first example is Starsat. So Starsat was initially called Top TV, and at Top TV, I was the Vice President of Customer Experience. And hopefully through this example, you start picking up some of the nuances that you have to deal with outside a generic model that you would look at. So when I joined Top TV Starsat, it was in its infancy and they were in a startup phase. So when businesses are in a startup phase, they generally focus on bringing as many customers in through the door and bringing them in at a rapid pace, as well as being very aware of what the customer wants, what the customer has been experiencing with the competitors, and also trying to outdo the competitors as well at this time. So in the Top TV space, the one person or the one company that was our competitor was DSTV, so MultiChoice. And we had to first try and understand firstly, internally, we needed to make sure from a brand perspective that we were speaking to what customers need. And the best place to do that was to understand what MultiChoice was doing. So that was a level of competitor analysis that we did in our business to get a better understanding before we went into design phase. The second thing that we did was that we started speaking to a whole bunch of South African citizens to understand what their current experiences were. And if they were watching TV, we wanted to understand what they wanted more of. So we went out and we did a lot of research. And as part of Top TV, what we wanted to do was bring the MultiChoice experience to the mass market. So understanding the mass market's role and understanding what the mass market what they were currently experiencing and what they were wanting to experience was also something that we needed to understand very well. So our first step was understanding competitor, understanding the existing experience, and understanding what people wanted more of. So we aligned our products, we aligned our marketing, and we aligned our packages and pricing to what customers wanted. And that armed us with a lot of credible almost resources and benefits to our product that we would be able to upsell and on-sell to customers. The second challenge, so whilst we were selling the products, we also understood that for a customer to come into the store or into our branches at that point in time was going to be a challenge. So the question there was, how do we get rid of that challenge? And the navigation and the journey was more an internal journey to getting everybody from the marketing business, from operations, from the financial teams, as well as the risk and legal teams on board with us to understand that, hey, this is one of the things across the customer journey that we need to address. How do we get customers to sign up to our product, to love our product, to trust our services without them having to have a face-to-face interaction with us? So that was the first challenge. The second challenge that we understood was that most of our customers were either unbanked, or most of our customers would have to try and get us documentation from a legal perspective to give us permission at that point in time to take off a debit order from their accounts. That was the second challenge that we understood once we started engaging with customers and signing customers on. So as we started the business, we understood that our processes needed to be fluid enough to be able to change quickly in order to accommodate our customers. The biggest thing that we needed to do internally was to get everybody to understand that whilst we are designing for a customer engagement and a customer end-to-end journey, we needed to understand that that design needed to be fluid enough to change once the business pressed the change button in the organization. The third hang up that we had with our customer journey was that we needed to get an installer out to the customer to be able to get a satellite dish attached to his house. And what we found was that most of our customers were living in not necessarily bricked buildings where you could easily, drill into holes and put up a satellite dish, because we were dealing with the mass market as well. So we needed a lot of innovation around three things, high level. One, how do I get a customer signed up without him having a face-to-face engagement with me? Two, how do I get him to pay me without having to get his documentation and his signature up front on a piece of paper? And thirdly, how do I actually put up a satellite dish, run cables to your TV, and make sure that you can watch a multitude of channels on your TV, barring SABC and ETV? So let's talk about what we did from a how do we minimize the face-to-face engagement. So what we understood was that customers were willing to speak to us. Customers understood from a language, because we offered the various languages, that they would understand us. And how do we get them to sign on and trust us? What we did was we ran a complete telephonic sales process with the customer, right through till getting the customer signed up on his debit order. All of that happened on the phone call with the customer. First thing that we needed to do was get to our agents to understand who the customer was that they were dealing with, so that they could put the customer in their shoes. They wouldn't judge the customer, and they would also be able to empathize with the customer. The second thing is that we had a very, very strong sales script. However, we wanted the agents to understand that they needed to have a conversation with the customer and not necessarily stick to the verbatim on the scripts that they needed to put in place. Now, verbatim is often things that we expect in contact centers for agents to follow through on. What we did here was that we said to the guys, this is a guideline for you. We want you to use the guideline, but also listen to the customer and speak his speak to get him to understand and trust us at point of engagement with him. And our agents managed to do that very well. And our agents flourished with the fact that they weren't given strict guidelines to follow through on. The second thing that we did was that we had to involve technology to get ourselves better equipped. We found we wanted a system that would allow us to give the customer to give us an address, for us to validate the address, and for us to actually get pictures on where the customer lives, so that when the installer went out to install the dish at the customer's place, the installer already had a view of what they were going to be faced with and they could take the proper material through to that place. So one, we engaged with a technology company that had a vast database of the mass market and where they lived. So when the customer said to us, I lived at 6 Alexander's Place, we were able to pick out the address. We were able to pick out, if there was no address, a description of the house, and we were able to put down a photograph of that house using the technology partners that we partnered with. And that is how we got through the hiccup on minimizing the face-to-face engagement. One was getting the business to understand that we were not going to follow scripted guides. We were going to give agents a guide to have a conversation with the agent. We built very strong benefits on our products so the customers could understand what our products could bring to them very easily. And the next thing was that we put in place a function that would help the installer get to the customer's house with least effort, as well as him being able to gear himself up with the right technology. Now, you might not call that innovation today, but this is what we did 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, we had companies building databases of mass market addresses together with photographs. We also, at that point, did a high level, we did a integration into the credit, the CIPC, so the credit checks, and we did credit checks online with our customer. And we also managed to get through the payment process with least effort because of the systems that we put in place. So in summary, we needed to understand what the competitor was doing, what the customer wanted. We then built the background, the internal processes to be able to get us to the point where we could understand the customer journey, preempt the challenges that the customer was going to have across his journeys, and substitute that with meaningful innovation products that would get us as a business to successfully close calls, and second, to get the customer his product that he wanted with least effort on his side. So that's a little bit about the innovation and a little bit about what we managed to do in the the Top TV / Starsat space from an innovation perspective. The success story behind that, in the first 2 months, we managed to sign up 350,000 customers in South Africa, and we had 350,000 customers within a week of signing up with us, having their dishes, their satellite dishes installed. And the great story about that was that we went above and beyond with our installations as well. Our installations, we had we had a monthly check-in on what were the successes and what were the challenges that we had throughout the customer journey. And we had pictures of customers installing poles next to shacks in a township area with Top TV satellites put up, because our customers installed poles with lightning conductors and the satellite dish on it. We also had, if a customer was living close to a tree, we even put up satellite dishes on trees at some point for customers. What we did for that customer was that we opened up his world to what the rest of the world was doing, and we allowed him to connect with the rest of the world throughout that process. The next thing that I wanted to speak to you about was Edcon. So Edcon in its heyday was a group of 9 brands, ranging from the Red Square, Boardman's, Jet, as well as Edgar's, and quite a few others that I'm not remembering right now. But Edcon was a retail fashion brand that needed to bring in and understand, needed to bring in, we talk about retail therapy. So I brought in the concept of retail therapy into customers' lives, into the thinking, into our employees' lives, to make them understand that we're doing more than just managing marketing, or we're just managing, sorry, just one moment. We're just managing their each business unit's issues or concerns, or the pieces of work. We're actually bringing meaningful engagements to retail, to the citizen of South Africa, to the retail world. And here, the challenge was a little bit different. What was happening was that we needed to find out how customers were experiencing the service in store. Now, we had 1,800 stores, and in order for my team of 4 people to be able to reach 1,800 stores and speak to customers and engage with customers and also test the service within the business was difficult. So what Edcon did was that they had a mystery shopping business that was helping them as partners when I stepped in. And this engagement was a very expensive engagement to find out that customers thought that our service offering was exceptionally good. But when I did my own mystery shopping, I actually understood that there were a lot of hiccups in the customer journey. I'm so sorry. There were a lot of hiccups in the customer journey that prevented the customers from actually doing business with Edcon. So digging a little bit deeper, I found that the mystery shopping was covering 1,800 stores, but what we were doing was that we were just skimming on the things that we as a business had control of, and we were not engaging with the actual customer experience and what matters to the customer. So here I took my team of 4 people, and we looked at budgets that we had available, and we started speaking to customers in store. When I started speaking to customers in store, we got a very good understanding of the customer journey. We got a very good understanding of the pain points that the customers was experiencing. And we also took our blinkers off, walking through the experience in our stores through the customer's eyes. So the first thing that you see when you walk into an Edgar's store, for instance, what would Edgar's, as a business internally, assumed that the customer was looking at the signage and looking at the product in the store. My experience with my team walking through the doors as a customer was the first thing that I actually see, or the first thing I engage with, is the security guard. So there in itself says to you that we were missing a lot of experiences that the customer was exposed to in our retail stores and in our assessments, in our mystery shopping. So what I ended up doing, there were 2 things that I had a concern about with the mystery shopping. We started looking at the internal business needs. The internal business needs drew us to understand that, 1, we were getting very good marketing insights, but we weren't getting any feedback to the suppliers that came together in the store to make the experience what it was. From the security guard to the music that you listen to in the store, to the signage that you see in the store when you go through, to finding the fitting room, to finding the right product, to going to the fitting room, to going to the sales area, and then leaving the business. So we then started mapping the true customer journey through the customer's eyes to assess. The second thing was that the supplier that was doing our mystery shopping was giving us feedback once a quarter. Often, when you see those results, it's too late to fix the problem. So we needed something close to as real time as possible. The third problem with that existing process was understanding that they are walking away without giving the store manager any feedback on what needs to be fixed in his business for the next 1,000 customers that walk through his door. So what we decided to do was we did a pilot test to prove to the business. So we went in with a proof of concept and a business case to the business to say to them, okay, we are spending so much money with our suppliers. Here is what are the holes at the moment in that process. And here is what we are proposing to get a true understanding of the business, of the customer journey, as well as giving feedback and coaching immediately. What we proposed was 50% less in what we were paying the supplier, as well as creating 30 more jobs across the country. And we ran real-time feedback to store managers, to regional managers, to head office as we went along. And what we used to enable us during that time was a collection, breaking down of the silos and getting everybody that puts the experience together in the store in one room, and we got them to talk about what they do. We got to share with them what the customer experiences. We got to share with them what we're going to be testing in the store. We got to agree the standards that we were going to look at and what we were going to feed back to the internal support staff, as well as coach and enable the retail store manager of that particular store before we stepped out of the store, to let him know what he needs to fix in his store immediately so that the next customer that walks in doesn't experience the same problems. So that was our innovation with very limited, well, we did have a system that supported us throughout that, but the system was the last thing that we looked at. Once the design of the solution was in place, once we had the internal agreement, once we had the money behind it, we then looked at a system that was going to support us throughout our entire journey. And that worked out exceptionally well, where we were getting 4 surveys done per store per year. We were now getting 40 surveys done per year, per store, and we were getting 40 coaching sessions done per store per year in the business, where we were able to close the gaps much quicker and much more meaningfully to the business and the business's performance across their entire customer journey. So I don't know whether there's any questions at this point in time, but I'm moving on to my next experience, which was, I don't want to say it was a learning experience where we understood we needed to do things a little bit differently. So here is Ster Kinekor, and when I stepped into Ster Kinekor, I stepped into Ster Kinekor as a Chief Customer Experience Officer. And at Ster Kinekor, when it comes to entertainment and theatre, you think that this is the best place to get innovation done and the best space to get an environment that would allow you to play a little bit more, and an environment to allow you to fail and get up and go forward again. What we found is that there was a bit of limitation with the amount of innovation that we could bring into the business. So with my team, I didn't sit back and think, okay, the business doesn't want to do anything, we can't do anything, let's start doing business as usual. What we started doing was that we started implementing incremental, meaningful innovation pieces into the business. And what supported us was data, and what supported us was research in understanding who the customer was. Now, the example here shows IMAX, but what I want to speak about is the prestige experience. So what we understood was that customers wanted to also have more intimate experiences. We did have a premium customer experience in the business when I stepped in, which was a 50-seater cinema that allowed you to watch exclusive movies, and you got to sit on bigger seats. Now, that's as far as the experience went when I stepped into Ster Kinekor. And when I started speaking and researching and looking at what global partners were doing, or global competitors were doing, what they understood was that they got into the mind of the customer with how the customer wants to be treated and what the customer needs at his point of experience. So two things very quickly, because I know I am running out of time. One, we understood that the customer wanted to have an at-home private experience at the prestige cinemas. So the first thing that we needed to do was take him out of the hustle and bustle of the queues and getting the popcorn and getting your cool drink and ordering your tickets. So where we could, in whichever cinemas that offered the prestige experience, was that we included a very small counter to buy your tickets specifically for the prestige customer. So the first thing that he did was that he didn't have to stand in a long queue. So already we were getting into the front of the queue, and that changed his experience quite incredibly. The second thing that we did was that we understood from him that he wanted to eat more than popcorn and a cool drink. So we started bringing in hot meals for this customer to choose before the movie started, and he could get the food delivered to him in cinema whilst he was watching his movie. And we learned as we went along when we started introducing the hot food process. So we couldn't build kitchens in our cinemas, but we did have back areas where we made the popcorn. So what we did introduce was a relationship between us and a food caterer that would get us food to the customer in the shortest period of time. How did we do that? We partnered with caterers in the mall that the cinema was in, and we opened up their menus to the customer so that he could order from Pizza Hut if he wanted, and we could bring the food to him with the least amount of interruption. So there again, we did two things from an innovation perspective, and that worked well. But what we understood during that time was that me getting the food to the customer, he didn't have a table to put his food on to eat. The second thing we knew was that our Ster Kinekor staff were finding it very difficult to get to the customer in a dark cinema. So asking customers, could we turn up the lights a little bit, 1 or 2 notches a bit higher, was the solution. But we only found that after a couple of months of engaging and learning about the prestige experience. And the third thing that we got right was that we had to pre-install specially made seats that would have an in tray attached to the seat that would bring the in tray up for the customer so that he could put his food on it and he was allowed to have the lights on a little bit less dimmer than the rest of the cinemas so he could see what he was eating. And that was our success stories. Our not so successful story was we wanted to introduce a kids cinema. And here I had internal challenges where the business was only willing to go to a certain part where a certain level of engagement with the customer. We had two problems. The front area was where we served popcorn and gotcha tickets, got too full for a very short period of time. And we also wanted to get to the kids market and attract them into the cinemas, because if you're a mom or a dad, you've watched the Ice Princess or Disney on Ice about 20 times with your kid, and they watch the same movie over and over again. So what we wanted to do was bring an experience into the theater for kids to come through and enjoy the cinema setup, whilst mom or dad sat at a table could enjoy a coffee whilst their kids were enjoying the movies. So the innovation idea was to put a dance floor in front of the movie, the big screen. Because I know with my kids and speaking to customers, children learn the songs, children want to dance like the animation that's on screen, and children want to will want to engage with each other so that they could go ahead, they don't have to sit in one place all the time and shush. The second thing was moms and dads generally walk in with big suitcases because they need to have any medication that the kid has, they need to have some food that the kid only eats, and they need to have anything that they need from an emergency perspective. So they needed to often dig into their bags and get things out. So what we wanted to do was open up a mom's club, a mom and dad's club only with kids. We wanted to introduce a dance floor. We wanted to introduce a slide that would get the kids entertained in a safe environment. And we wanted to ensure that we had the lights not on as dark as the other cinemas, so that mom could find things in her purse and dad could find things in the bag, and kids could easily spot mom or dad could easily spot the kids. And we also wanted to introduce colorful seats so that the kids could also sit in their favorite colored seats. And we also did away with seat numbers. That was the proposal that we put together. Unfortunately, the business wasn't ready for that kind of investment and that kind of that kind of evolved innovation at that point in time. And I only managed to get, at that point, colored seats put into cinema for the kids, and that's as far as Ster Kinekor was prepared to go. But innovation exists, and the second I accepted the colored seats at that point, and I took it as a win, although it was 10% of our entire idea. And we started working with small other engagements, small other things that we could introduce into the cinema at any particular time. So we wanted to have a nanny service as well. So mom could drop the kid off with the nanny at Ster Kinekor and go do her shopping and then pick up her kids. And those were ideas that the business really, really loved, but they didn't have the internal resources to go ahead with that. So those are my stories from an innovation perspective. I just want to take you very quickly into the model that we talk about from an innovation perspective. And it talks about starting off with fundamental research. And I explained fundamental research to you from Top TV through to Edcon to Ster Kinekor. You have to start with research. And then when it talks about applied research, which is the second bubble talks about applying your learnings of what the customer wants and what the customer needs and what the customer is unhappy with across the customer journey. Then the next cycle talks to product service development. That's getting the entire business behind you to understand your research and understand what we're trying to achieve, and getting them to deliver and design and innovate in that space so that they all feel that they are included in the solution, and then getting this innovation socialized in the organization and piloting the innovation and look at what it's done from a business perspective as well as a customer satisfaction perspective. And the big thing about innovation is that it doesn't stop. You continuously need to listen, get feedback, and tweak your solution. So it's a cyclical process through technical innovation and social innovation. Social innovation internally and externally with your customer, and it involves the entire organization to get behind you. So I've said a lot, but the last thing that I want to share with you before I leave is leading innovation and change through my experience requires bravery because you're stepping into territory unknown, openness to know that things aren't going to work out exactly as you want your idea to go. And also that some people might not like your innovation. And on top of that, the openness to understand that your customer might not like what you're doing. Transparency, get everybody involved in the solution and share what's working and what's not working. I think total honesty talks directly to transparency, as well as the ability to be vulnerable, which is, I'm putting an idea out there, we're implementing this idea, we've had effort put behind this, and it might not work. But if it works, great. So I think that's me in summary. Thank you so much. And any questions, if anybody has any questions. Eldon, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Yugesh. Thank you for doing that and for sharing those valuable insights and lessons on how you have used innovation in different organizations. Yeah. So let me check from the learners because there were no questions that came into the chat. So either you've done a really fantastic job or everyone's as confused as hell.
I hope not the latter.
Veganites, you're more than welcome to ask verbal questions if you like. Otherwise, pop a question into the chat. I'm glad that you found that the talk is worth 5 fat lips. So thank you to those who have answered the poll. But yeah, I mean, we see our role as helping you to understand practically in the world of industry why you're studying what you're studying or what the impact of that is going to be on humanity, on customers, on society. So I'm very pleased that Yugesh was able to share with us some of those ideas, some of those concepts from her experience. I see the comment from Drew. It was really interesting. Glad that you see it that way, Drew. No other thoughts, comments, or questions, please let us know. Just so that you do know, you can go back to that slide, Yugesh, if it's okay. Yugesh and I are business partners in the CX group. We've been working together in the same industry for probably the last 10 years. And we see it as our mission to make South Africa and Africa as customer-centric as it can be. So as this is our final time together for semester 2 2020, if anyone would like to keep in touch, there are our details. We're quite happy to engage with you, to answer any questions that you may have. As I said earlier, it's really been fun and challenging to be with you and to try and guide you on this journey to explore innovation, its barriers, its enablers, its consequences, its impact to society, the implications of doing it versus not doing it. I hope it's been meaningful and valuable and that you're going to put it to good use as you embark both on the rest of your academic journey, but also your professional journeys in life. So thank you very much, Yugesh, for what you've shared. Thank you, learners, for giving us the privilege of having spent time together. And we hope our paths cross really soon. Thank you, and we'll see you around the corridors of Vega soon. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.